Okay, people, we've already heard three of Tucker's manifestos for his new political party that doesn't have a name. The first one, obviously, was fairness. After that was sovereign. We just heard him wrap up productive. The next manifesto, point number 4 of his manifesto is beautiful. Before he gets into it, I want to give you the definition of that. Beautiful. The word beautiful is an adjective that means having qualities which give great pleasure or satisfaction to the senses or the mind. It describes things, people, or ideas that look, sound, or feel deeply pleasing, attractive, or excellent. Pleasing to the senses, excellent quality, wonderful of kind. Okay, so that is going to be his 4th point manifesto. Let's get into it, Tucker. We'll bring it apart and take it apart. Stay with me here because I think you have to understand. I sincerely believe that Tucker's talking about creating a party that in part already exists. And we'll tell him that. Tucker, what's your next point, please?
And should continue to be, which is beautiful. If you were to have left the United States, I don't know, 40 years ago, 1986, and you went somewhere far away, I don't know, Uzbekistan, and you came back, probably the first thing you would notice, other than it's way more crowded than it was 40 years ago, is that it's less attractive than it was 40 years ago. And that was, and if you're old enough to remember, always one of the great appeals of this country. Whatever the political system, or whoever was running it at the time, almost kind of didn't matter because America was fundamentally a beautiful place with handsome people, attractive people, by the way. But also it was just nice. Little towns, pretty little buildings, pitched roofs. People made an effort. It was clean. I remember going in the 1980s to a town called Delo, Mississippi, which I didn't check because Wikipedia didn't exist, but it had to have been one of the poorest per capita towns in the United States. Delo, Mississippi. D''Lo. Who knows what that even means? But I've spent a good part of the summer there. And the first thing I noticed was that the poor people in Delo, Mississippi, this is not patronizing, it's just a fact, went to extraordinary lengths to keep their little houses tidy and pretty. And they were. They had gardens in front and used tires painted white to make paths. I mean, it was really kind of amazing. And it was the first time that I realized that, like, it doesn't take that much other than self-respect and some determination to preserve our birthright, which is the beautiful surroundings around us. Because it matters. Now, why does it matter? Kind of hard to quantify. I'm not sure the Treasury Department could give you a straight answer on why beauty matters, but I'll tell you what you already know, which is this: beauty is ennobling. Being around beautiful things makes you better. Being around ugly things, being bombarded by ugly things, objects, a landscape denuded of trees, filled with dollar stores, bad architecture, disposable crap, all through your house and your life and your office, that does not make you better. It demoralizes you. It cuts you off from what is true, because beauty is truth. And it's totally disrespectful to what we are inherited. To the things that were given to us.
You see, I agree what he's talking about in terms of things being beautiful. I agree, Tucker, that it doesn't take much to beautify even the worst of places. I get that. And you know what? And I agree with that. You know, I grew up in the inner city and we didn't have much. Matter of fact, you know, Tucker, a lot of the places that you're talking about, long decades past, have been designated slums. Because you had slumlords like Donald Trump's father that didn't really care about black neighborhoods or poor neighborhoods in terms of the upkeep of the property. And we have that even now in our communities, but it's not so much against black people, if you will. Okay? The reality of it is those communities were never brought up by the owners of the houses in those communities. They didn't care how people kept the place. Now, embedded in those communities, embedded in those slums, embedded in those inner cities, were people that love to see green grass and love to have a painted fence, love to paint their house. My parents were one of them. We got out and painted and put grass and planted grass and did all of those things we could just to make the block look better. So there are people like that, Tucker. But unfortunately, systemically, because and this is not taking up for anyone, and I hope this doesn't come out wrong, even against Black Americans. But when you systemically treat people like animals, they're going to behave like unruly animals, and they break stuff apart. Now, again, that goes back to the unfairness. It doesn't take much to clean up when people feel like you said, they're living in a hopeless situation. All they have in their mind and heart, unfortunately, is destruction. So we have to go back to what happened, how it happened. There are tons of communities, black and white, all across America, and also I would say filled also now lately with the Mexican population that is part of this unbeautification of property, if you will, because rich people own them and don't care how they're upkept.
And there's no reason for it. And of course, you don't need to be conspiracy minded to wonder, why were some of the prettiest buildings in America torn down all across the country within the space of 10 years in the 1960s, and then replaced by some of the ugliest buildings, concrete brutalist architecture? Why is that?
Because your rich friends did it.
The old Penn Station, Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
Look them up on the internet.
Yeah.
It'll shock you that someone decided to tear those down and replace them with what you see there now.
Yeah.
But that happened in every city in America.
Yeah.
It's called urban renewal. But what it really was an uglification of the country. And again, clearly there was a design to this. There was a reason this happened. It wasn't like urban planners and architects woke up one morning and said, I don't know, a concrete FBI building is just prettier than the one it replaced. No.
You know who did it, Tucker? Your rich friends. Your developer rich friends. Listen, people who were on the lower class didn't have the money to redo Madison Square Garden. You're talking about developers. You're talking about Trumpers. You're talking about Donald Trump and his developer friends basically tore down everything and rebuilt everything using unbeautification products, cheaper products, unsafe products, and that is even coming out now with the discovery of buildings that were built decades ago are falling apart because of the products that were used. The reality of it is this unbeautification that you're talking about on the grand scale, on the national scale, was done by your rich friends.
So if they knew it was ugly, that was the point. And what was the point of that? Who knows? Probably not even worth speculating. All that's worth saying is being around beautiful things makes you a better person, and it's within your control. It's certainly within your list of demands, and it should be near the top of that list. And that would include, by the way, cleanliness. There's something about calls for cleanliness that set certain people on edge. Like only Nazis care about cleanliness. Really? Travel around the world. It used to be that when you traveled to a country like Pakistan, for example, they would say, I want to come to the United States. Why? Because it's clean. People understand that cleanliness is better than filth. And if you allow your city to become covered in graffiti or let people crap on the sidewalk or don't pick up the trash, that's bad. In fact, it's a sign that things are falling apart. And maybe that's a sign that you want to send. Not clear why you'd want to send that. But it's bad for the people who live there, not just on public health grounds, not just because it spreads disease, because it's bad for their souls.
Well, you know what, Tucker? I have to say, you know what? To some degree, I have to agree with you on that. You know, even living in the inner cities, it was great to see our house painted every summer. It was great to see the gates sprayed. It was great to see grass. But on the larger scale, when you're talking about the city, I'll take New York, for instance. Yes, there's a homeless population. There's been a homeless population in New York City for decades, Tucker, and it's bad. But it's not about making the city beautiful. What are you going to do? You can't just eliminate the homeless people. No, you have to have, I'll go back to what you said, a level of fairness that brings those homeless people up. Either they have, psychological issues, social issues, emotional issues. definitely they have economic issues, but we have to find a level of fairness that gets a homeless person from being homeless. And I think Mondami is doing a good job of that, trying to address the homeless problem in New York City. As far as the garbage goes as well, I must agree. I must agree. You know, there is a new rat population coming out that's immune to rat poison. Why? Because they've been around so much in the New York subway system and in the streets with the garbage that it's commonplace. And it does spread disease, and it is unsafe. And again, I say, Mondami is starting a new process with garbage cleanliness and also dealing with the rat population to beautify or re-beautify New York City. So I'm going to say that some of the ideas that you have are in play, and they're in play by the Progressive Party, Tucker.
That's why you make your bed in the morning. And not only is there nothing wrong with that, it's important to say so. No, you're not Albert Speer because
I'm all for making your bed in the morning. Listen, I read that book, Make Your Bed. It was by an admiral or general, and it really revolutionized my life in a time when I was really seriously dealing with depression. And one of the things that I found he was correct, making your bed in the morning not only helps you get ready for the day, but when you had a horrible day, there's nothing like slipping in to a made bed. It's psychological, it's emotional, it gives you a sense of accomplishment, and you can build on that sense of accomplishment to other things. So I do agree, okay? But you know what, Tucker? And you know what? We didn't have much growing up, but my mother always made sure we made that bed in the morning, no matter what we had. I miss you, old woman.
you care about pretty architecture and clean streets. It's because why wouldn't you do that? If you love your country and your neighbor and yourself, the very first thing you would do is clean it up. That's the very first thing
You gotta help me, Tucker. You've got to help people who can't do that. You're starting off talking about a level of fairness, but you have to help me. You've got to help the people who can't help themselves to be able to understand, even Tucker, who mentally don't even feel beautiful, who emotionally don't feel beautiful, who spiritually don't feel beautiful. And if I don't feel beautiful, why would I want to even care about beautification? No, you've got to help me. You've got to bring me up. You've got to encourage me. You've got to put me back on a place where I feel that I'm beautiful. There's been so much personal destruction into the beautification of people and labeling people ugly that sometimes when you feel ugly, you don't care if your surroundings are ugly. Is that making sense?
would do, by the way. And then it goes for crime, too, which is optional. We have a panopticon. We have a totally comprehensive surveillance state. There's nothing you say that is hidden. If you have a phone in the room, you can be monitored, and likely you are. There's nowhere you can go that isn't tracked. Your face is all over federal databases. Biometrics is real. If you haven't flown recently, let me reassure you, there's nothing you do that the authorities can't find out about.
And they've been doing this for decades. Yes, it's gotten a lot easier for them to track us and understand and watch us with technology. And I don't think people pay enough attention to that. You're being watched. You're being used. You're being spied on by the very people that are supposed to protect us. But it all starts with the administration and the administrations of the past. We need change. We need change.
Ever. Well, that raises the obvious question, why are there still rapes? Why are people assaulted on the street? Why is there any crime at all? I mean, as long as you're gonna live in a much more efficient East Germany, why wouldn't you get rid of crime? It's called flock safety. Flock safety. So why isn't it safe? Good question. And again, we're only speculating, but we can certainly notice. The point is, it's all optional. Not every country has filthy cities. Not every country has people living on the sidewalk or doing drugs on the playground.
You know, I've got to talk about this. And you know what, Tucker, you're right. And a lot of those countries that you're talking about that are beautiful, they have standards for fairness for everybody. Most of the countries that you're talking about right now that are beautified have free healthcare as a human right for everybody. So everybody is available to get treated better medically, emotionally, so that they don't have to be that way. There are also uniform standards economically for those people as well. Now, see, people want to call that communism, but Tucker's talking about stuff. He's talking about what these other countries are doing, but he's not talking about how they're doing it. They're doing it progressive. They're doing it with free healthcare as a human right. They're doing it by redistributing the wealth and the economy in their particular countries, by making sure that the lower man is doing better and the rich are giving back and we're not paying as much. That's what some of these countries are doing, Tucker. Now, you call that socialism. I call that progress.
You don't have to live like that. You could fix that in a day. There are a lot of complicated problems. How do you make Social Security solvent? I don't know. That's a tough one. Probably could if we tried. But we can be dead certain we don't have to have a lot of rapes or murders or armed robberies or car thefts or carjackings or junkies living on the street. It's not good for the junkies. It's not good for anybody else.
Listen, there you go get personal. It's not all junkies living on the street, jackass. There's people that had lives, Tucker. There's people that have lives. You've ever spent time talking to some homeless people as I have in the past. You come to understand a lot of them are not dumb. A lot of them did have past. They walked away from life for something broke them, and we need to help repair them. Now, some of them are junkies, okay. But nevertheless, if we had basic things like free healthcare as a human right and other things as a human right, then we would be able to uplift those people. And by the way, if you want to take care of Social Security, re-beautify or de-beautify things like the big beautiful bill that gave all the tax breaks to the rich, further destroying or demolishing Social Security. That's easy too, Tucker. Don't you think so, people?
And you certainly don't have to have graffiti on your buildings. What? No, it's not art. It's a desecration of art.
Oh, boy.
And it's on purpose. And anyone who tolerates it is part of the problem. That's a base level demand. If you went to someone's house and there was a pile of feces on the floor, you would leave. I'm not going to eat in someone's house like that. It's disgusting. But we put up with it. In fact, we browbeat anyone who complains about it as like a white supremacist. Not clear.
That's because white people try to make it like it's all black people who are dirty and nasty. We're gonna call it out. Let's speak plain. And so when people talk about cleanliness, they try to make it a black thing, and it's not. And it's not. It's an American thing. It's an American thing, Tucker. I'm not calling you a Nazi or a white supremacist because you're saying people should be clean. People should be clean. As you say, cleanliness is next to godliness, Tucker. So you know what? Maybe you need to be clean too. And Trump needs a bath.
Why? Why is it bad to demand order? Not fascism, the opposite of fascism, order and cleanliness. No crime. The rest of the world looks on in total confusion. Why do we tolerate this? Why do our leaders tolerate this? We shouldn't, and we should say so out loud without embarrassment.
You know something? I have to say this. I've been watching this crazy show on TV. I've become quite a fanatic with it. It's called The First 48. It talks about all the crimes that have been committed in certain states, and a particular group, the Homicide Investigative Unit, have 48 hours, the first 48, to try to solve the case, or else it could go into an unsolved case basket. And I see a lot of people, the justice system. I see all different types of homicides. And it boggles my mind how one person can get life for something, for killing somebody, and then somebody else can get 3 years. I say that all to say this. I think the justice system in America is broken for so many different reasons. You know, what good is putting somebody in jail for life You know what? Make something for life. The betterment of the people on the outside. Give them something to do in there so they're not killing each other, and so that the ones that will make it out in 30 to 40 years have some type of skill set. I'm not saying make their lives great, but there are certain basics even that we need to give them in fairness to help society. But when you're sending someone to jail for life and they're 20 years old, what in the hell is it good for? The taxpayers paying for that. We gotta find a better way with our justice system. And that also means that we have to really investigate the type of judges we have. And you know what? We really have to think about, Tucker, making the legal defense and legality easier to afford. And if we're gonna say that if you can't afford a lawyer, one will be provided to you, then damn it, let's provide a good lawyer. Let's not just provide somebody who's going to tell somebody just to cop a plea when they could very well be innocent. So I think there's a lot to be said there about the justice system in America and about making Americans more safe, and also the recidivism of what happens when somebody goes in jail, spends 30 years, come out, and in 2 weeks kill somebody again because all they knew was jail. So if you're going to be in jail for 30 years, maybe I should just let you stay there. So we need to really think about that. We need somebody to really help us to take a look at our justice system in America. What do you think, people?
Doesn't mean that you have to go fascist in the way you treat your population. In fact, allowing disorder and rape and murder and carjacking is itself a form of fascism. It is oppression of the population. Allowing your public transit, your subways, to be filled with urine and graffiti, what is that? It's an attack on your population. So a call to fix that is liberation.
And I got to say, I'll say it again. What you're talking about in terms of beautification, I think we have to. It sounds like to me you're dumping on New York City. And I'm going to use that as my springboard because, again, when it comes to cleaning up the subways and making the subways safer and more beautiful, because you're right, I agree. I think Mondami's doing a good job with that, Tucker. So again, it seems like your manifesto is already part and parcel being executed by the Progressive Party.
What our leaders have done to us, and it should be a baseline demand. Do not build another ugly public building, period. Do not use disposable materials to crowd our landscape with soul-destroying crap ever again, because we're human beings who need beauty. It feeds our soul. You don't have to be a liberal art major from Bennington to believe that. It is true for every human being at every point in time.
You know, Tucker, I agree with you about this beauty thing, but I think it's bigger than just buildings and subways and streets. I think it speaks to the core of the human condition. If you want me to appreciate beautiful things, you have to make me feel beautiful about myself. You have to help me spiritually, emotionally. You have to help me feel that I'm better than my surroundings. You have to make me understand and be able to dream of something beautiful. You can't oppress me. You can't keep me down with names. You have to build me up with encouraging words. Is that making sense, people?
Beauty is essential, and a society that does not produce beauty probably won't continue. And we want ours to continue. The next thing that...
Okay, so we're going to stop here with beauty. We'll get into number 5 in a second. But again, what are your thoughts on this beautification of his manifesto? I have to say this again. I'm seeing some of the things that he's talking about are logical. It makes sense. These are things that all Americans would ultimately think are fair and impartial. But on the crux of his first point was the issue of fairness. Now, if you really want to bring people and make them more productive, if you want to make people more beautiful, you know what I'm saying? If you want to do those things, then you have to have a level of fairness that addresses the systematic unfairness or the systemic unfairness of all lower class people. And I'm talking about white, black, red, green, yellow, Mexican, whatever you want to talk about. We have to bring everybody up. And the only way to do that is to take from those people that are higher up and let that trickle down to me, not just in terms of financial and economic benefits, but educational benefits, societal benefits, housing benefits. You have to be able to do that. And the only way you can do that is we have to shake the trees up above and tell the rich people to let go of some of that coin. Thoughts? We'll get to this in a second. No, and so thank you.